Okay, so here's your homework for tonight, and it's basically all about circles and their equations, and there's a lot going on in it. So I went over at the end of class with you some reminders of where we had done each thing. In other words, which type of problem is this, where you can refer for help if you need it. And I just want to go over that in a little bit more detail with you in case you forgot what I said or didn't catch it because at the end of the period. That's what I'm going to do first, is I'm just going to remind you of what I said about each type of problem. I would strongly suggest that after that, you go ahead and pause this video or turn it off completely and try all the problems yourself. Or at least try like maybe the first couple of each section. Because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through several of them for you. But you don't want to do that until you don't want to watch me go through them until you've done them yourself. Because watching me do a problem is no substitute for trying it yourself. Okay, you don't learn anywhere near as much from watching me do it as you do from trying to do it yourself and then seeing where you've gone wrong. So please try them all yourself first. But right now, let me just give you some hints to use when you're doing that. First of all, 1 through 4 are just like the problems we very first started when we first started this packet. This was the packet we used for notes starting on Wednesday. 1 through 4 are like examples 1, 2, and 3. You're just plugging into the standard form of the equation. That's all you're doing on 1 through 4. It's also just like your homework from last night. Homework from last night looks like this. 1 through 4 on tonight's homework are just like 1 through 6 on last night's homework. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are what we did first that was new today. In other words, once we finished going over the homework, this is the first thing we did. We said the way that we're going to write a standard form, these are all in standard form to begin with, all these problems. And then we're going to write them in the general conic form by multiplying it out by FOIL. Okay, in other words, and it doesn't have to be FOIL, but you're going to take this and you're going to multiply out this binomial. You're going to multiply out this binomial and then, go back to your notes, because we did take a couple of notes on this. They were not in the packet. There were no problems like this in the packet. We did the notes separately. Then there's a certain order you have to write it in to be general conic form. The squared terms first, and then the not squared terms, just the plain x term and the y term, and then the numbers, and then it's equal to 0 on the right hand side. Numbers 9, 10, 11, and 12 down here, these you're starting in general conic form and you're moving it to standard form. So you want to have those parentheses. You want to end up in standard form, which is kind of like this. Remember, you have parentheses squared plus parentheses squared equals number. That's a standard form. So that's where we're trying to go, which means that I have to complete the square. I have to complete the square for the x's. I have to complete the square for the y's. This is what we did last in class today. We did 2 examples just like this. They were examples 6 and 7 in your packet, which look like this. Here's example 6. Remember that the way you set it up to begin with is a huge help. If you set it up right to begin with, that helps a lot. Okay, so that's how you're doing numbers 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then number 13 and 14, on these problems, they're giving you a center and 1 point on the circle and asking you to write the equation. Please remember that if you're asked to write the equation of a circle in standard form, there are only 2 things you need. You need the center and you need the radius. Those are your 2 things. Okay, we have the center. But to find the radius, we're actually going to find the radius squared. We did this yesterday at the end of class. Example 4. That's what you're doing here. You end up plugging in that 1 point as an x and y and the center as an h and k into the standard form, and that finds radius squared. So then you're ready to write your final equation. That was example 4 yesterday on Wednesday. And we also did another problem just like that. You may have done it on the margin of your paper or maybe on a separate sheet. So you should have 2 examples like this from Wednesday. That's numbers 13 and 14, where you are given the center and 1 point on the circle. And so you have to figure out what the radius is as part of writing that equation. 15 and 16 are actually just like 13 and 14, except they don't give you the center. If you have the endpoints of a diameter, and I'm just going to go ahead and write on here, but if you have the endpoints of a diameter that means something like this. And you need to find the center. The center is right in the middle of that segment, so you use the midpoint formula. Midpoint formula, remember, is you take the x's and average them, add them together and divide by 2. And you take the y's and average them, add them together and divide by 2. So on 15 and 16, you'll want to find the center first by using midpoint formula, and then it's exactly like 13 and 14. Okay, so this is where I would just stop and maybe refer back to these beginning, opening minute and a half or whatever it is of this video, just for tips as you're trying them all. Now, after you've tried some, if you want to come back and check some, I'm going to do a couple, maybe, I think I'm going to go ahead and just do the odds for you so you can come back and check your odds. All right, so after you've tried them all, go back and check your odds. And that will start right now, so pause here if you want to. All right, number 1, I'm just plugging into this form. This is my standard form of the equation. Plugging in the center, which is hk, so x minus 1 squared plus y minus a negative 5 becomes y plus 5, and r squared is 64. And there's my answer to number 1. Number 2, my center is hk, here's r, so when I plug into x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, that's the standard form of the equation, x minus a negative 1 becomes x plus 1, y minus 7 just becomes y minus 7, and r squared becomes 4. And there's my answer for number 3. So those you're literally just plugging in. All right, numbers 5 and 7, we're going to have to go ahead and multiply these out. I'm going to go ahead and, well, I can't really zoom out, so let's stick with right here. Let me grab another piece of paper because I want to spend a little bit more space on doing those problems or doing the actual multiplication, in case you struggle with that. Okay? Let me just point out first, actually, sorry, I'm arguing with myself. Let me point out what you'll get, and then you can skip the part where I explain how if you don't need it. This is what you get when you multiply out that first set of parentheses. X squared minus 20x plus 100. When you multiply out this set of parentheses, you'll get y squared minus 26y plus 169. Okay, if you need to see that, here goes right here. This is x minus 10 times x minus 10. X times x is x squared. X times negative 10 is negative 10x. Negative 10 times x is also negative 10x. And negative 10 times negative 10 is positive 100. So I have two middle terms that can combine. They're like terms as negative 20x. Okay, so that's how I got this first part. As far as the y squared one, let's go ahead and work that one out. Y minus 13 all squared. You're multiplying it times itself. So we're going to do FOIL. Y times y is y squared. Y times negative 13 is negative 13y. Negative 13 times y is negative 13y. And negative 13 times negative 13 is positive 169. So this becomes y squared minus 26y plus 169. And that's what I have right here. There is still a plus between them. That plus comes down. Now, this number over here on the right, I'm going to subtract from the right, which brings it over to the left. The reason why is in general conic form, you have equals 0 on the right-hand side. So now the only thing to do is to rearrange things a little bit and combine my like terms. The only like terms I have are the numbers, the plain numbers. Remember, we call those constants. So 100 plus 169, that's 269 minus 1, so that's going to be 268. So let's go ahead and rearrange things. I want to do the squared parts first in alphabetical order. Then the just plain variables, so minus 20x, minus 26y, also in alphabetical order. And then we said 100 plus 169 minus 1 is 268, equals 0. That's my answer. Same thing happens on number 7. When we multiply this out, we get x squared plus 20x plus 100. Remember, you're doing FOIL. We multiply this out, we get y squared minus 6y plus 9. And again, if you don't believe me, go ahead and actually do the FOIL like we did down here. Subtract the 58 from both sides. And so I get negative 58 equals 0. And now I'm just rearranging things and combining my like terms. So x squared plus y squared plus 20x minus 6y. 100 minus 58 is 42. I'm sorry, I should have put that in there too. 100 plus 9 is 109. Minus 58 is 51. And there's my answer. All right, write the standard form. This is where I have to complete the square. Remember that the setup here is key. So first I'm going to put all the x's together in one set of parentheses with a blank. The blank is because I'm going to be completing the square. Plus, there's always a plus here in the middle. Put all the y's together inside parentheses with a blank, equals, add 38 to both sides. Remember, you always want to move your number to the other side when you're completing the square. If we have another side, if it's an equation. And then notice that because I have 2 blanks on the left, I'm putting 2 blanks on the right. That's an important step. Okay, so now I need to figure out what goes in the blank. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Right here, half of negative 10 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. Remember, you will never ever be subtracting from both sides. You're always adding to both sides, because when I take half of this and I get negative 5, you're squaring that whole number. Negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. If you put it in your calculator and your calculator tells you differently, it's because you put it in your calculator incorrectly. If you want to square something that has a negative on it, if I want to square negative 5, I have to put it in parentheses before I square it. So this factors as x plus 4 squared, because 2 numbers that multiply to give me 16 and add to give me 8 are 4 and 4. This factors as y minus 5 squared. 38 plus 16 plus 25. Let's see, 16 plus 25 is 41, plus 38 is 79, I believe. That's my answer. Okay, moving on to number 11. Works the same way. You want to set it up right to begin with. So you get x squared minus 20x plus blank plus y squared plus 8y plus blank equals negative 78 plus 2 blanks. Okay, half of negative 20 is negative 10. Square it, you get 100. Half of positive 8 is positive 4. Square it, you get 16. So this gives me x minus 10 squared, because the 2 numbers that multiply to give me 100 and add to give me negative 20 are negative 10 and negative 10. This gives me, for the same reason, y plus 4 squared. Negative 78 plus 100 is 22. Plus 16 is 38. You'll notice all these, the arithmetic, like just adding the numbers, I'm doing them in my head for time's sake. So if I do one wrong, just double check me on your calculator, and if you find that I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But not squaring things. If you square a negative, you're still going to get a positive. Don't forget that. All right, number 13, we said this is like on your examples from Wednesday on your note sheet, example 4. We already have the center, which is HK. We don't have the radius, but we do have a point, which is XY. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in to the standard form of the equation for X and Y and H and K and use that to find R squared. We really don't even need R. We need R squared because we're being asked to write the equation. And R is squared in the equation. So 17 goes in for X. H is 7. Y is 2. K is 3. Let's see what we get here. That's 17 minus 7 is 10. 10 squared is 100. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So R squared is 101. So now I'm ready to write my equation because I have the center to plug that in, and I have R squared, and that's what you need for an equation in standard form. So that's number 13. Number 15, I'm doing exactly the same way, but first I want to find the center. So let's go ahead and do that here. Okay, I want to find the center point between negative 12, negative 7, and negative 14, negative 5. So that's the midpoint between the two of them. Negative 12 plus negative 14 divided by 2 will give me the new x. Negative 7 plus negative 5 divided by 2 will give me the new y. Negative 12 plus negative 14 is negative 26. This is going to be negative 13, which makes sense because we're looking for a midpoint. That's the middle number. The middle number between negative 12 and negative 14 is negative 13. Same goes here. The middle number between negative 7 and negative 5 is negative 6. Let's see if that's what this gives me. Negative 7 plus negative 5 is negative 12. Divide by 2, you get negative 6. There's my midpoint. That midpoint, remember, is the center of the circle. So now I have the exact same information I had in 13. I have the center, which is HK, and I have a point on the circle. I don't actually have one point on the circle. I have 2 points on the circle. I can use